Look at the second one. Negotiate and agree these expectations wherever possible and communicate them clearly. Negotiate is a word that brings some people, adult, teachers, support staff, care staff, out in a bit of a rash. What are you saying? Let me tell you what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you walk into the classroom and say, I've got this lesson on the Romans. Do you fancy it? No? Okay, right. Whenever you're ready, we'll get round to it. We'll do something else in the meantime. Let me make it clear at the outset that I think it's healthy for children to see adults as being in control. I think that's what they need. That's good for them. But if we're trying to get them to buy into a behaviour management system, or to buy into the rules, let's say, in essence, it makes sense if we can get them to understand the logic and the rationale behind why we have the rules, why fundamentally having a rule is a good thing. And they are good things in my view. I mean, I'm talking about these principles here. I'm presenting them to you as being principles of managing children's behaviour. Now, in my view, they're just good principles for managing anybody's behaviour. These are the principles I would like my behaviour to be managed by. They aren't, very often. I mean, certainly I've had bosses in the past who, the notion of positive behaviour was a long way away from their thinking. Their idea of managing my behaviour was every time I did something wrong was to wheel me in for a rollicking, basically. So I don't think that's a very clever way of managing people's behaviour. These are the principles here that I would like. And I would like to know, in my job, I'd like some idea of what I'm supposed to do. And I suspect most of you in this room would as well. Most of you would regard that. I mean, you call them rules, you call them expectations, you can call them some notion of what you're supposed to do. I think most of us think that's proper and healthy and useful. I also think that we'd like a hand in deciding what that was, rather than it just being imposed on us. I think we'd like some opportunity to negotiate all these skills. When you ask children about behaviour, the things that they come out with can be quite amazing. I mean, we think that we know what they're thinking, but when we ask them what they're thinking is not what we thought they were thinking at all. I've asked children, what are the rules of this classroom? One boy said, we must not bring bombs to school. Another one said, we must not light fires in the toilets. My favourite one was, we must not touch teachers' thighs. Now, admittedly, on closer examination, that turned out to be a spelling mistake. And apparently it should have been, we must not touch teachers' things. But even so, that wasn't a rule of the school either. I spent a day in a high school in Leeds not so long ago interviewing 24 children at the request of the staff. They'd done a year's work on positive behaviour, and very bravely they wanted to know what kind of impact it had had on the pupils. So 24 pupils, 12 boys, 12 girls, all ages, different mixes of sort of naughtiness to goodness. And my first question was, does this school have rules? All but one of them said, yes, absolutely. Silly man, of course it does. So, of course, my next question was, well, what are they? Well, half of them didn't tell me at all, and the other half said, no fighting, no swearing, no spitting, don't be cheeky to teachers. Interesting. In this school, on every classroom wall was a set of 7 whole school positive expectations. There was even a set in the room where I was doing the interviewing, and they bore no resemblance whatsoever to what they had told me. These were good smack on right on rules. These were treat each other with care and respect, remember to bring the correct equipment to lesson. They knew all about reframing it in the positive. They knew about the principles of positive behaviour, and they thought, I think, that they'd communicated them clearly. Well, they're on the wall, for heaven's sake, how much more clearly can you get them? But it's like the fire notice. There's more to it than just coming up with the rules, even if they're negotiated, sticking them on the wall and then expecting them by some sort of osmosis to actually affect what happens. So it seems to me, if you want children to understand the rationale behind these systems of managing behaviour, it pays to involve them in the debate. They know stuff about school that we don't know. Their perspective is different, or can be different. bullying is a classic example. What we think goes on in terms of bullying, what they think, is usually very different. Interestingly, it's not always that they think there's more bullying than we do. Sometimes we think there's more bullying than they do, but there's a difference. And it's worth exploring that difference if we want them to understand, as I say, the logic and the rationale behind having clear expectations.